Many doll lines are made for tween girls. They're toys that aren't just fun to play with, but that are fun to look at. Colorful, fashionable, and trendy. In the 80s, some of the most popular doll lines included Barbie, Strawberry Shortcake, and Rainbow Bright, which all have different themes, but are still generally designed to be as colorful, fashionable, and rooted in girl-centric friendship as possible. Fashion and friendship are great foundations for appealing to young girls, but what about the market of kids, or anyone else for that matter, that are looking for dolls that aren't quite so modern and flashy? Enter Epoch, a Japanese gaming company that in 1985 took a different approach to dolls, introducing a new toy line that contrasted the existing market, which was Pleasant Friends of the Forest Epoch System Collection Animal Toy Sylvanian Families, which was later shortened to just Sylvanian Families. They're also currently sold under a different name, Calico Critters, in North America, but they're the exact same toy. Sylvanian Families are anthropomorphic animal figurines with relatively simple designs and soft features. With big round eyes, cozy fashion, and each one covered in fuzzy fibers through a technique called flocking, they convey both the innocence of being tiny little 3-inch tall animals and their charming way of life. While being tiny little animals helps them look really cute, it's also part of what helped them stand out from other dolls of the time. Stuffed animals can be great for companions and have existed for decades, but even the most popular stuffed animals of the 80s, like Monchichis, for example, couldn't exactly fit into a dollhouse. Most fashion dolls, as we know, have a great sense of style, but aren't as ideal for slice-of-life household play. And Cabbage Patch Kids or others like them could provide a simulated baby experience, but not so much the rest of the family. While not the first ever toys to be modeled after animals, Sylvanians were among the first animal figures of their kind that could not just fit into dollhouses, but were made for them, combining elements of other toys into one neat little animal-themed package. By 1989, just 4 years after their initial launch in Japan and North America, the brand had reached international markets, released just under 30 total families, received British Toy of the Year awards for 3 consecutive years, and had even produced an animated series based on the figures. More on that later. So, safe to say they were a success, but what is it that made them so popular? The main draw of Sylvanian Families is that instead of selling a fantasy of glamorous fashion, flashy cars, and exciting parties, they were rooted in themes of nature, simplicity, community, and, of course, family. The families don't live extravagant lives, but comfortable ones, humble and quaint at worst, and elegant but sensible at best, trading dream houses and roller coasters from other doll brands for gardens and bakeries, which, even without water slides and elevators in their houses, is definitely still a fantasy. Oh, to be a family of rabbits eating cake in your well-decorated woodland manor without any troubles. The first release of figures in 1985 introduced 9 families, including rabbits, bears, mice, raccoons, squirrels, and moles. Pretty typical woodland creatures. Though these aren't just the rabbits or the bears, but the Babelbrooks and the Timbertops. Each separate species or subspecies makes up a family with a surname, hence the whole families thing. And every family member each has their own individual name, and all of the families with all of their members together make up the entire fictional village of Sylvania. Most family names relate to their animal species, like the moles Heidi, Muddy, and Digger McBurrow, the Dalmatians Dot and Dash Kenilworth, the Puddleford Ducks, or the Milwaukee's West Highland Terriers. Though other names can relate more to the nature theme, like the Evergreen Gray Bears, Moss Reindeer, or Nettlefield Goats. Some names fit both nature and the species, like the beavers Misty, Murky, and Wade Waters, the skunks Jasmine and Lavender Bouquet, or the truffle Wild Boars. And anything else that doesn't specifically relate to nature or the family is still guaranteed to sound very cutesy and or appropriately cottagecore, like the Marmalade Bears, Mulberry Raccoons, or Cakebread Toy Poodles. Similar to Digger McBurrow or Murky Waters, some animals have some pretty punny names, occasionally even including real-world references. The meerkat Harry Spotter sounds a little inspired by Harry Potter, while also relating to how meerkats love to keep a lookout. The de Pembroke corgis that all have royal titles for their names like Duke, Queenie, Prince, and Lady are a nod to the corgis of England's royal family. Bruce Springer the kangaroo sounds kinda similar to Bruce Springsteen to me, though that one might just be a coincidence because I don't really get the correlation there. And I'm almost certainly reaching with this one, but Nick Goldback? Nickelback? I have no idea what rodents have to do with Nickelback, but as far as I'm concerned, this hamster is Chad Kroeger confirmed. Look at this graph. When it comes to the variety of different animals, the foresty vibe continues to dictate what families will live in Sylvania. Most species tend to fall somewhere in a Venn diagram of being woodland creatures, mammals, soft and fuzzy, or just small. Though it's not a strictly enforced rule set or anything, so there are still a few exceptions to this Venn diagram that I just made up for this video. Cats, rabbits, dogs, bears, and mice all have the highest number of different families, but Sylvania has also welcomed frogs, penguins, elephants, monkeys, sloths, giraffes, alpacas, and seals, just to name a few. Honestly, when looking at some of these different animal types, I can kind of see why they tend to stick to woodland creatures. I don't think any of them are ugly, but maybe not every animal needs a Sylvanian family. Okay, fine. They're all actually super cute, and I'm only talking about the frogs. They did them so dirty. And speaking of more unfortunate-looking figures, it's also worth mentioning that a decent amount of Sylvanian families' similarly themed figures have cropped up over the years. While they may not all be direct knockoffs, still many have tried to perfectly capture that unique combination of woodland charm and homespun aesthetic with varying degrees of success. It's just a tiny fuzzy animal wearing a dress. How hard can it be? Pretty hard, apparently. Some do come pretty close. With similar sizes, proportions, animal types, and styles, even Sylvanian fans sometimes can't tell the difference at first glance. Brands like Mapletown and Forest families are pretty close contenders in style, and they don't just copy-paste Sylvanian ideas, but have a lot of other animals that Sylvania doesn't, like donkeys, crocodiles, or even dinosaurs. Other brands, though, were a little less direct with their inspiration. I'm pretty sure no one would mistake Skiing Pig for an official Sylvanian, and both Lil Woodsies and Honeybee Acres also stand out on their own, taking some creative liberties with the proportions. Whether each brand deserves to be labeled as a knockoff or full-on copycat is up for debate, considering some have existed just as long as Sylvanians and might just be competition instead of bootlegs. Though one thing that I've noticed between all of these similar figures is that they seem to just miss that Sylvanian quality, from the clothes to the flocked fur to the proportions, or just how cute their faces are. In my humble opinion, Sylvanians seem to keep a more consistent level of quality and charm across pretty much all of the figures. It's also pretty common for fans to make custom Sylvanians, whether that's by painting and coloring existing figures, or by molding entirely new models. Christopher Vera is an example of an artist that makes especially high-quality pieces, and of unorthodox animals, too, like axolotls, phoenixes, sea creatures, bugs, and plenty more. So if you're not too fussed about whether they're officially licensed or the correct brand or not, there's a lot of variety in tiny fuzzy animal figurines to choose from. But as far as the original Sylvanians go, along with the initial 9 official families, a wooden starter home and a set of starter furniture was also released at launch. Although the house might seem pretty basic in its layout and depth, that just means that it has all the more potential for renovations. Sure, most Sylvanians don't have designer jewelry or long flowing hair like typical fashion dolls, but that's not to say they're without their own sense of style and household treasures, aka lots and lots of add-on furniture, decor, accessories, and other toy sets, each sold separately. Though you might notice by their more simple furniture and clothing that even dressing them up and decorating their houses is also filtered through a cozy, wholesome lens to fit that special Sylvania style. Think cottagecore, country living, or mid-century suburbia. If you're looking for a flat screen for your Sylvanian's home, you'll probably have to just make do with a set from the 70s instead. Grandfather clocks, grand pianos, and rotary phones aren't antiques, but typical household staples. There's no explicit time period that Sylvania is said to exist within, but the family's lifestyles tend to feel especially vintage and old-fashioned, making Sylvania reminiscent of a time period spanning roughly from the 1930s to the 1980s, with a few exceptions here and there. Most typical rooms of a house have a coordinating furniture set, or collection of sets, I should say, because depending on your family or decorating style, even within the limitations of older time periods, there are still plenty of directions you could go with your interior design. Does your dream tiny animal family bathroom have a more traditional toilet or a fancy one? Is the kitchen more rustic or modern? Will the living room be more dark wood or light wood? Does the bedroom have floral sheets or plaid? You decide! With not just varying furniture, but also many different houses in any size and style you can think of, there are truly endless options for materialism and customization when it comes to making your Sylvanians' homes feel complete. The sets also vary not just based on their themes, but in how much detail they offer to really make the houses feel lived in. Even a more simple way of living has a need for not just practical stuff, but plenty of decor, and not just picture frames, flower vases, light fixtures, fireplaces, and curtains, but hairbrushes for vanities, oven mitts for the kitchen, towels for the bathroom, and you may already have a fully decked out kitchen, but without the specific set for homemade pancakes packaged with whipped cream and very tiny forks, will it ever really be complete? Having had little to no knowledge about Sylvanian families before getting into this video, I have to say I didn't expect to find so much variety, but also so much quality and care in all the different pieces. It makes sense that there are so many items made for role-playing families, but the level of immersion that a lot of the sets offer is really charming. I appreciate these little extra details so much for adding to the overall slice of life, family-oriented, or just generally cozy environment of all the rooms of the house. This coming from someone with thousands of hours in both Animal Crossing and The Sims, respectively, so safe to say I think I've accidentally baited myself into a prime target demographic zone, like I need more things to collect. But biases aside, the attention to detail is still indicative of how much care is put into maintaining a consistent atmosphere across the whole series, sparing no expense to make the loaves of bread or tiny little teacups as wholesome as possible. There is a point that can be made about the consumerism that this very expansive list of additional accessories promotes, especially considering Sylvanian families tend to be popular not just with kids as toys, but with miniaturists and adult collectors. And often the point of collecting is to collect all the parts. Sure, you might already have a tiny toilet, but do you have the special edition tiny ceramic toilet? You better get buying. But collecting is also voluntary, and Sylvanian families are definitely not the only doll line to have such a wide variety of additional pieces available to buy. Even if all the extra parts are hard to resist, they feel more optional for catering to your own playstyle rather than milking the franchise. In addition to home furniture and decor, lots of sets also cater to the personalities or hobbies that each family member may have. The animals that are introduced to Sylvania aren't just random figures or characters. Each one is a new member of the town and an addition to the community, often given distinct traits, hobbies, or roles within the village or household that are detailed in their official descriptions. Which, side note, I find it very funny how in-depth some of the character details are compared to others. The description for Ray Wildwood the Brown Rabbit, for example, is more like a backstory. Older brother Ray Wildwood from an early age was encouraged to sing and play the guitar at family parties along with his sister Tina. Together they were very good and all the guests enjoyed the show, but now that he is older, he prefers to party than sing. And the rest of the family has a similar amount of detail. But then, comparatively, we get to the chestnut raccoons, which each have same one-sentence descriptions that basically all equate to, "They're so crazy." To be fair though, there are around 170 unique families, each typically with a set of 4 members each, but often with room for even more. I get that there are only so many different character traits, or even just new combinations of words to explain the same repeated character traits to go around. So no shade for running out of unique, lore-appropriate ways to describe yet another tiny fuzzy rabbit figurine, but this one is a slightly different shade of white than that other one. In most families, the girls tend to bake, sew, garden, draw, and shop, while the boys often like sports, academics, musical instruments, and their careers. It's definitely a more traditional approach to tiny animal gender roles, but whatever interests you subscribe to your tiny families having or not having, there are, say it with me now, even more accessories to facilitate any and every animal's hobby, within reason. Sylvanians can do almost everything you can do. Go to school, keep bees, drive cars, drive boats, drive horses, which raises a sort of Goofy versus Pluto situation that we'll just casually gloss over. Dance ballet, deliver pizzas, go trick-or-treating, work with tools, become ordained ministers, and much, much more. And again, the variety and detail continues to astound me. Sylvania has more instruments than my high school's music department did after they cut the arts funding. But luckily, it's so peaceful and utopian that don't ever happen here. The greater Sylvanian Forest consists of 3 main areas: the village, the town, and the seaside. Each region has different landscapes and features and different buildings and homes depending on the families that live in it. If you do happen to welcome a more career-driven family into the community, like the town's hairdresser Antonio Patches, or Chester and Willow Thistlethorn who run the newspaper, they've got buildings for that. And really any other kind of building, furnishing, or accessory that you could want to expand not just the families of Sylvania, but the town itself. From stores and restaurants to recreation and town services to even little phone booths and street lamps. But even the most decorated and strategically placed hospitals and cake shops can never make Sylvania into a real place, unfortunately. At the end of the day, they're just playsets, and the characters don't really move. If only there were some kind of visual and/or interactive media that could fill this tiny rabbit-shaped void in my heart and really bring the world and the characters to life. Oh, yeah, that's exactly what I was looking for. 9 different official Sylvanian Families games were released between 1999 and 2004. None of which saw any international releases outside of Japan as far as I can tell. So they're all in Japanese, and I don't speak that, but I played them all anyway. I did find fan translations for the first 2 games, at least. In the Fairyland Pendant, a fairy asks Aster Dandelion to retrieve a magical pendant for him. Playing as Aster, you go to school, water flowers, and collect furniture to decorate your room. Pretty simple stuff for a kid's game. Although the second title, Sylvanian Melodies, was a rhythm game that was also seemingly made for kids, I found it really hard. I do also really suck at rhythm games, so it was probably just my skill level, but it was not a very relaxing adventure in Sylvanian Forest this time around. Fortunately though, the rest of the games were a lot easier. Lighthearted and straightforward enough that I could find my way around even with the language barrier. I could not get past the language barrier. I thought that I could figure out what was going on with enough sheer determination, like reading a book by only looking at the pictures, but I did eventually turn to Google Translate. It didn't always translate things perfectly, but it was still very helpful in understanding what the heck was going on. In different Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance games, you play as various characters like a milk rabbit, brown mouse, or walnut squirrel, or nut squirrel, breezing through casual gameplay, wandering around town, baking patterns into bread, delivering pizza, helping bring in the laundry, playing in the forest, collecting fruit, and even designing clothes, using the coveted mosquito rag and Uncle's clothes. The fairies made a few more appearances, usually to establish the plot or objective, but the stories were very simple and it was all low stress and wholesome, which is to be expected. There were also a couple edutainment games, the CD-ROM title Sylvanian Festival with different minigames like coloring, trivia, matching, and silly animations, and a game for the Sega Pico that had similar simple animations and minigames, though it still looks super cute in all of its pixels and pastels. Once again, I don't know what's going on, but I just like to look at it. The first animated video series that was released in 1987 is aptly named Sylvanian Families, and does feature the animals of Sylvania, but the real main characters are the humans. If a kid makes a wish before going to bed, it might just be granted, in the form of astral projecting out of their bodies at night to go visit the woodkeeper's cabin, who is some kind of magical guy with affiliations to Sylvania that's not explained at all, but everyone just knows who he is somehow. He then shrinks the kids down so they can enter the magic door portal to Sylvanian Forest, where all the families live. There's so much extra lore they're throwing at you before you even see any of the animals, including that they're not just anthropomorphic, regular-sized animals made tiny in figurine form, but they're actually 3 inches tall. It's also been debated where exactly Sylvania is said to be located, with various references to North America, Tokyo, and the UK, but this cartoon's English dub uses American voice actors, so that is certainly a fact of all time, even if it doesn't exactly clear anything up. The show has a pretty classic 80s kids cartoon format with little episodic adventures featuring different Sylvanian families, and even villains, Packbat and Gator Possum, which are unique to just this cartoon. While it makes sense to aim for a more wide appeal, with the involvement of humans, villains, animals that don't really resemble the figures all that much, and the woodkeeper, whatever his deal is, this series seems more geared towards general audiences than existing Sylvanian fans, which can often alienate both sides in the process. The main point of each episode is for the human kids' wish to come true, or otherwise learn a lesson related to their wish.
I guess you know why I'm here. My grandparents are totally uncool.
Leaving Sylvania to act more as the backdrop of their adventure rather than the main focus. There is still plenty of animal involvement,
Happy anniversary! Oh, baby!
and of course their cute outfits, family matters, and cottagecore activities, but overall the show is a bit of an offshoot from the canon Sylvanian story and world. Fortunately though, stories of the Sylvanian families premiered just a year later in 1988, and as it was stop-motion animated using the actual figures, it was a more faithful adaptation. Narrated by a single English voice actor, the various families and characters get up to mischief or go on little adventures, though everything is kept lighthearted. There are no humans or villains, and a girl breaking her pencil during school is about as dire as things get.
Something terrible happened. Holly Wildwood broke her pencil.
Which is true to Sylvanian lore. The characters and their personalities are also true to the lore, not just accurately characterized, but playing key roles in the story or plot of each episode based on their official descriptions. Tons of decorations and tiny little accessories make thoughtful set dressing, and the figures are also animated to blink, which really brings them to life. The series only received 4 episodes and was only released for British audiences, but it's still a cute show that definitely captures the essence of Sylvania well. After the stop-motion episodes, the next original video animation didn't release until 2007. Although this is another animated series, the CGI models resemble the actual figures really well, so it feels more like getting another glimpse into the real Sylvania. The way their fur is animated also gives the characters this soft, almost glowy quality to them that might not be totally intentional, but along with the quilted backgrounds of the intro, it makes for a fitting, cozy, whimsical vibe. Though the rest of the series isn't always so peaceful. Between stargazing, going to school, eating baked goods, and speaking in English accents this time, it has a lot more mischief and adventure than the stop-motion series, including cave diving, river rafting, and a lot of animals falling over.
Myself.
Including falling off cliffs. It's not exactly out of character for Sylvanians to sometimes get into trouble, but I guess I just didn't expect quite so much action. The 3 total episodes have an interesting mix of both adventure and nothing really happens in Sylvania except tea time and picnics, but definitely still felt faithful to the main themes of the brand. Between 2015 and 2017, 2 more OVAs were released with the same CGI animation style, along with a mini-series, a 2023 series, and an hour-long movie. And additional animated shorts are also still posted pretty regularly on the Sylvanian family's YouTube channel, so there is plenty of content to watch if you're interested in keeping up with the lives of the characters. And the dubs continue to give them English accents, so that seems to clear up the mystery of where these animals are supposed to be from. Most of the animations feature a collection of different animals, though usually sticking to the most popular or well-known families like the Persian and Golightly cats, walnut squirrels, bramble hedgehogs, cakebread poodles, and especially the chocolate rabbits. Since the chocolate rabbit family was introduced in 2007, Freya Chocolate has evolved into the Sylvanian family's mascot, receiving special edition figures, promotional material, and of course featuring as the main star of the newer series and movie. I especially appreciate these new series for not just the technical advances, but for how realistic the modern animation makes the characters look. From their perfectly flocked fuzzy fur, to the shine of their eyes, to the stitches on their clothes, all the tiny details in the show look, well, tiny. Like, these are the real figures in their proper scale. Like, that's not just a regular ribbon on her dress, but a human-sized ribbon cut down to Sylvanian size. Does that make sense? If you want to see the characters on a larger scale though, like say on a human scale, you can visit one of 3 different Sylvanian families themed parks in Japan to fully bridge the gap between the imaginary Sylvania and real-life fantasy. The attractions are complete with life-size figures, life-size houses and buildings, official toy museums, meet and greets with the mascots of the characters, and of course a toy store to buy the real deal. They even sell kid-sized Freya dresses and put little raincoats on the statues when it's raining. It's so precious. I don't know why, but I'm especially obsessed with the model houses that, of course, also have 2-scale furniture inside that looks so appropriately chunky and plasticky. It's like the dollhouse furniture, but real and big. Even though dollhouse furniture is already modeled after mundane real-life items, so it shouldn't be interesting to see it scaled back up, but I don't know, I can't explain it. Seeing these houses just scratches a certain itch in my brain, I guess. And in addition to the games and shows and theme parks, there are also storybooks, multiple themed restaurants, and 3 official Sylvanian musicals, all of which, of course, also expand on the characters and general lore of Sylvania. But aside from all of that, Sylvanian Forest and its residents are mostly at the whims of their collectors' creativity. Regardless of whatever intended backstories and assigned hobbies and names exist out there, how each animal acts and lives is really up to whoever is directing the toys, and that's the best part of playing, using your imagination. Unless you film and post your imagination to TikTok, then you might end up in a lawsuit. An infamous TikTok account has gained popularity in the form of millions of views and followers, all for just playing with Sylvanians. Though I guess that's a little bit of an understatement. The account's name, Sylvanian Drama, appropriately describes all the dramatic stories that are played out by moving the figures and adding captions for their dialogue. There's scandalous romances, criminal dealings, and soap opera-esque plot twists, directly parodying shows like Gossip Girl and Pretty Little Liars with the intention of being as ridiculous as possible. Thea von Engelbrechten, the TikToker behind the account, is also not just in it for the views, but is an avid Sylvanian collector. Each video features tons of different families, houses, and accessories, and also makeup, body mods, and tiny plastic surgery at points, to really sell the theatrics of it all. Despite Sylvanians being the main characters, which we know are typically very wholesome and drama-free, the videos are basically the direct antithesis to the main theme of the toys, which is the part that didn't go over well with Epoch, the company behind Sylvanian families. It wasn't just the cheating plotlines and various forms of tiny animal on tiny animal violence, or how funny it was, but that the account had also posted a number of sponsored videos with various big-name brands, all under the name Sylvanian Drama and with the Sylvanian products front and center. So that, with the cheating plotlines and tiny animal violence, equated to copyright infringement and what Epoch described as irreparable injury to Epoch's goodwill and reputation. That could only be settled with a lawsuit filed against Thea in April of 2025. Many fans of both the Sylvanian brand and Thea's TikToks felt that filing a lawsuit against a consumer for technically just playing with the toys made Epoch the villain in this situation. The argument being that even if the stories got a little wild or scandalous, she was still within her rights to use the Sylvanians and whatever crazy skits she wanted, since it's their intended use. And at least for the irreparable injury to their goodwill and reputation part, I have to agree that it's taking things a little too far. There's definitely a difference between trying to change the perception of a brand's image versus parody or just having a little fun, which is what Thea claimed was the purpose of her videos. But the larger issues seem to come from the actual name of the account, using not just the Sylvanian image, but also its title, and of course the sponsorships, which, parody or not, look a lot like Sylvanian families officially partnering with other brands, and then supporting tiny animal violence. In what seems like a happy ending though, as of August 2025, Epoch has officially dropped the lawsuit altogether. Thea has also been allowed to keep her existing account and old videos, though she now posts under the name Gossip Squirrels, which is incredible. The lawsuit dismissal might leave room for some kind of agreement or settlement behind the scenes, but overall it looks like it's all ended on a positive note. As for the more recent moves from the official Sylvanian families, since reaching its 40th anniversary, there's been a bit of a noticeable change over the years in the toy line's direction. While it's still true that there's no official timeline or time period that Sylvania is said to belong to, there is definitely still a vibe to gather from all of the sets and characters. One that's notably more natural, simplistic, or otherwise old-fashioned. But with each new set that's released, that vibe tends to shift more and more towards something modern. Some of the earliest and most classic Sylvanian building designs feel very homespun or suburban, and often come with an iconic Sylvanian red roof. Cabins, cottages, and simple family homes were pretty standard. Over the years, though, the buildings started to get bigger and more complex. The 2017 Town series in particular took a big step away from the traditional village feel of Sylvania by introducing multi-story shops, fancy accessories, and even tram lines, which were all more city-focused than small-town. And while red roof houses are still currently being released, they specify the classic red color on the box and in their title, because of how many new sets don't feature the classic style. Many sets released in the 2020s stray from the nature-inspired earth tones in favor of bright and colorful pastels. 2020 sets also focus less on houses and family furnishings, or even typical town buildings, opting instead for whimsical pieces like carnival rides, royal carriages, and skyships. There have been similar types of sets released in the past, so it's not as though these new versions don't belong in Sylvania at all. But the main difference lies in the overall themes and their consistency with the brand's image. Newer toys tend to cater to younger generations that are now the target demographic, with colors and aesthetics that have clearly changed to a more rainbow, glittery, mermaid, unicorn surprise, if I had to put a name to it. You can see it in new figures too, like the pony family with long flowing hair, which was previously unheard of in Sylvanian families, along with their equally pastel and unicorn rainbow-ish fashion and accessories, and including the new modern blind bag series, which is a popular yet less consumer-friendly gimmick. Almost all of these new pieces are also made for babies, not like a demographic of babies, well, actually kind of, but also Sylvanian babies. And hey, babies can be fun, of course, and have a strong place in family gameplay. But the more new content is churned out for babies and babies only, the more it kind of leaves out the whole rest of the family. You know, the thing that makes up the entire point and name of the brand. It's not just that each new set shifts Sylvanian Forest further from mid-century family-oriented cottagecore to baby cupcake kawaii fairyland, but also that these newer toys tend to have much cheaper quality. Sets are sometimes made with thinner, translucent plastic, but described with words like ice or frost in the title to justify it. Clothes that used to be individual removable garments are now all one piece. This, unfortunately, isn't a Sylvanian family's specific issue either. It's pretty common for many current brands, whether they've existed for 4 years or 40, to take more and more cost-cutting routes, even if it means sacrificing quality. It's just especially disappointing to see it happen with Sylvanians, when their initial launch and rise to success seem to be directly tied to their higher quality and attention to detail, something that stood out from other plastic-based fashion doll lines. A decent amount of Sylvanian fans, especially older collectors, feel frustrated by the babies-only mindset, and much prefer the older standard for production. But collecting Sylvanian families is what you make it. The good thing about a 40-year-old brand is that there's 40 years worth of figures and sets to catch up on, even if the modern direction isn't suited to your style. Sometimes the fun of collecting is the thrill of the hunt, finding older pieces with the classic vintage style that Sylvanian fans love most. And with so much room for customization, painting, and DIYing, the baby fairyland utopia may not be for everyone, but there will still always be joy to find in your tiny little families eating cake together in their well-decorated woodland manor. Hi, welcome to Jelly TV, where I shout out a video that I think deserves some love. I recommend watching, What Happened to Cake Mania? Retrospective deep dive by Otter Talks Games. I love a good deep dive into a topic I didn't know I needed a deep dive on, especially if that topic is a nostalgic early 2000s PC game. Cake Mania is one of those games that I played but never had much personal history with, but it has a lot more history and lore itself than I'd ever have guessed. Otter dishes out all of the sweet details, from the development history to how the game's panned out over time, and with better cake puns than I could come up with. She's thorough, funny, and engaging, so I recommend checking out this video and her channel. A huge thank you to Daniel E. from ABQ, Kevin Evans, Angel Bunny, Bunzo, Kiris Desarun, Chumby, Knuckleoso, Lojua Animal, Lou, Mark Kent, Nighttime Coral, Ollie E, Online Grandpa 1, Paper Sam, Pharmamags, Pixel Puppy, Shaples, Theodore Nicoloilius, and the rest of my patrons for supporting me. These are your new official government-assigned Sylvanians, based entirely on vibes, and no, you're not allowed to change them because that would hurt my feelings, so hopefully you like your new companion.